Morning, Internet. Welcome to Monday, a new week. I guess, again, I clearly get confused by this. It's a new week depending on whether you use the US system or the European system or wherever you are. Maybe weeks don't start on Monday. But contingent upon it being a newish week, welcome to today. Um, Got to run to class as per usual, but just wanted to reflect briefly with you on one thing, and that's sort of the learning process with LTC, learning to code, and how some things feel initially impossible or just exhausting, and then over time, with increased exposure and practice, they actually become somewhat easier. What do I mean by this? Well, I think for me, what I was sort of coming to or having in mind when thinking about this before recording the video was the idea of reading technical documentation. So when I was first LTC learning to code, I would come across sites like MDN, so the Mozilla Developer Network, which we'll link to in the notes, or when I did like Python tutorials or Ruby tutorials or stuff, I would go to places like rubydocs.org, ruby-docs.org or something like that. But there are both official and unofficial places for documentation, and I think like documentation, technical documentation, the fact that it exists is great. But when you're a beginner, when you're sort of new at this practice, it can be really both daunting and exhausting. So for me, when I would like look up something, let's say I was learning JavaScript, and I would like want to look up the for each function in JavaScript, I would like Google it, and one of the first results would be to a place like MDN, so the Mozilla Developer Network, and it would just be like very technical, very dry. I think MDN is like pretty good compared to some languages and some resources, but like at a certain point, usually within 10 to 50 seconds, like my eyes would just start to glaze over, and like I would just want to stop reading. Like I wouldn't, I, I guess sort of the problem for me is like I wouldn't even know what I was looking for. I wouldn't sort of know how to digest or understand the different sections of a place, of a resource like MDN. And I think it's just like really difficult when you don't sort of know how to frame or pose the question to get the piece of information or the answer that you want. And this was true with like Python, and it's still sort of true. Like in my program, we just started using Ruby on Rails, so like MVC, Ruby on Rails framework for web development and Ruby backend. It's like really cool, right? But like a lot of times they'll just like rather than explain something or rather explain something in detail, they'll just link to the technical documentation. And even now, having studied programming, let's see, it's close to June, so it's like May, October, over 6 months, like full time. I still have this sort of like glazed over eyes effect occasionally with the technical documentation. But my point is that I think, at least for me, like there have been points where like I've deblocked that, right? So I went from like 10 seconds to 30 seconds to 50 seconds to now I can read technical documentation for 10 minutes or something before I get bored. It also depends sort of on the problem and the specific syntax and the thing and like how much context I have around the question that I'm trying to ask, as well as the specific resource, like whether it's MDN or Ruby Docs or code.org or something else. I think it sort of depends on how the information is presented and by whom. All right, so before summarizing, I just wanted to say for those of you sort of at the early point of your trajectory on LTC, I think there is hope. There is l'espoir. There is a chance, a likelihood even, that it will get easier with time, or at least it will get less overwhelming. For me, it just happened with practice and exposure. Same with like the first time I started doing like higher order functions in JavaScript. So a function within a function, or helper functions in JavaScript, essentially like a mini function or mini method that you like put inside a bigger function or bigger program to sort of modularize things. The first time I saw those concepts, it was really overwhelming. Same with documentation. It felt impossible, but just by being exposed to it and by doing it and sort of by rereading or reading the documentation and just coming back over and over and over, it got easier or more natural over time. So I presume that's the case for you. If you haven't experienced that already. If you have an opinion, or if you have experienced this, so we would love to know what you think in the comments. Like, did you initially find reading technical documentation easy, or does it come naturally? Have you seen sort of any change over time? Do you have any tips for those of us who are sort of early in the stage, very early, or where I'm at, like 6-8 months, something like that? All right. So in summary, this video was about both technical documentation and the exposure to things like technical documentation, more complex subjects within programming, two separate things, and how sort of being exposed to these over time may facilitate ease or digestion, or at least less of the glazed over eye effect. We appreciate you watching. We look forward to your feedback or comments if you care to share. If not, that's totally fair. There's no trap here, there's no snare. Okay, I'm gonna go to class as per usual, so hopefully we'll see you later today if we have the chance to make a second video, or second or third video. It's been really cool interacting with you all, and look forward to future interactions. Cool. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.